Representative Khanna appeared on Fox News yesterday to defend his calls for Senator Dianne Feinstein to step down. Let's watch.
There's no job I know of where you can just continue to not show up and people think that's perfectly fine. We live in a democracy. The people are the boss. Now, Senator Fetterman has been out longer than she has. Is your concern just about her, or would you say it also applies to him as well?
Well, only in Washington would you get criticized for saying something so obvious. I have a lot of respect for Senator Feinstein, but she's missed 75% of votes this year. She hasn't been showing up, and she has no intention. We don't know if she's even going to show up. She has no return date. In contrast, Senator Fetterman has said that he's going to show back up on April 17th. So it's one thing to take medical leave and come back. It's another thing where you're just not doing the job.
Meanwhile, California Governor Gavin Newsom is answering questions about who he will appoint to temporarily replace Feinstein should she step down.
Dianne Feinstein were to retire, will you nominate an African-American woman to restore the seat that Kamala Harris is no longer in the United States Senate? And do you have a name in mind?
I have multiple names in mind. We have multiple names in mind, and the answer is yes.
Feinstein has yet to make any kind of announcement on her long-term future in the Senate, further fueling speculation over her physical and mental health. Yet many of her colleagues are rushing to her defense. Here's New York Senator Kirsten Gillibrand yesterday.
You think it's time for her to step down?
Dianne Feinstein is an extraordinary senator, and she's been a role model and a mentor to me my entire career. I sit with her on the Intelligence Committee. She asks some of the most searing, pointed questions of anyone on that committee. Her legacy and her depth of experience is valuable. And we've had so many senators who have had illnesses, whether it's Mitch McConnell's illnesses or senators who have had strokes. These are issues that we're human, and we believe that a senator should be able to make their own judgments about when they're retiring and when they're not, and they all deserve a chance to get better and come back to work. Dianne will get better. She will come back to work, and she's already told Senator Schumer that he can replace her on the Judiciary Committee if it's urgent for these hearings for judges. She's a team player, and she's an extraordinary member of the Senate. It's her right. She's been voted by her state to be senator for 6 years. She has the right, in my opinion, to decide when she steps down.
Oh, this is unhinged. I'm sorry. Let me first take on the comparison to Mitch McConnell and Fetterman. As far as we know, the injuries that they have, representative that they have, whether it's a stroke, whether it's the depression for Fetterman, whether it's McConnell's fall, they have articulated that there is going to be a recovery period and they are going to be back. That is a very different thing from Feinstein, who has been reportedly increasingly lacking cognitive function over the course of a number of years, and whose ailment is fundamentally age. Yes, she's out with shingles right now, but pretending like her absences and her inability to function as she should in the Senate is purely because she happens to be out with shingles is really missing the forest for the trees.
What I'm hearing from you is you hate women. You just hate them.
Well, that's the second piece of this, which is the OMG flashbacks to the Ruth Bader Ginsburg discussion, where people who very reasonably said you have no guarantees about who's going to win the 2016 nomination. Barack Obama has already experienced these difficulties in appointing justices. Ruth Bader Ginsburg is a survivor of one of the most deadly kinds of cancer that there is. Mm-hmm. She is an older woman, regardless of what her personal ailments are. She absolutely should step down.
And frankly, replacing a Supreme Court justice is more of an ordeal, more of a process than at this point replacing Feinstein would be. She just get a new appointment by Newsom.
Yes. And the fact that Democrats haven't already moved to just take her off the Judiciary Committee is just more negligent, specifically in this realm of judicial appointments. I truly don't know what's going on. It's like they're trying to throw the game here.
Yeah. I mean, if the issue, and Nancy Pelosi raised that last week, she said, well, I don't hear them saying this about non-women. I'll go ahead and say it. I'm very concerned about Fetterman's ability to continue serving. I did not think, I truly thought he was perhaps beyond the capacity to serve when I was observing him during the debates. It's astonishing to me he was voted into office anyway, and I don't know that he can or should continue.
Yeah, whatever you think about whether he should, the idea that people haven't been clamoring for him to step down and directly calling it
I don't know that McConnell can or should. They're all, Fetterman is not too old. He is having other issues.
Yeah.
But the rest of them, there is an incredible amount. I mean, I bang on this drum quite a bit. The elderly are governing us at an unprecedented level and scale in both political parties. It is a liability. It's a liability for the business of governing that they have to, the older you get past a point, your medical visits and medical issues become much more numerous and much more routine. We've all had this experience of our parents and grandparents and great-grandparents, et cetera. So, the idea that we would be governed by our older and older and older people, and look, I know, medical technology makes it easier to live to a more advanced age in some ways. That doesn't mean you're necessarily in great shape to do a job as demanding as this.
Right. I think the aging Congress is a problem because of what it reflects about the power of incumbency and the lack of fresh voices in democracy. I don't think that necessarily older people are bad, but on a case-by-case basis, the point is to claim that only sexism is driving the critique of Feinstein is bizarre given how much discourse there's been about literally John Fetterman over the course of the last year. Now, I would also like to say that just about Kirsten Gillibrand and this choice to frame it in these sexism terms, it is deeply damaging to the cause of feminism, I've got to say, and really disrespectful as a woman. She is someone who really made her name in the Me Too space, turned around like everybody else in the Democratic Party, would not acknowledge any of the accusations that were made against Joe Biden at the beginning of his presidential run. His own vice president at the time said we needed to believe the 8 women or so who had made various allegations. And as soon as he became the nominee, all of that was swept under the rug. Mm-hmm. So people like Gillibrand, in my humble opinion, have lost all standing to make any of these kind of criticisms. And they only bring up feminism to defend other rich and powerful women like Dianne Feinstein from having the same kind of accountability that regular women in the everyday absolutely don't get. Mm-hmm. And the last issue I would just like to point out about Newsom potentially appointing a black woman, I don't know why people keep saying things like this. If you have a black woman in mind, great. Appoint her when you want to appoint her. Saying out loud that you are going to appoint a black woman just is setting that person up for accusations that it's a pure kind of affirmative action diversity hire. They're going to have to face accusations that they're not actually qualified for the job the entire time. I don't know who this is for.
It's for Joy Reid.
Apparently, yeah. So that conversation, this promise apparently was made back in 2001, back when the Democratic Party was still pretending to care what black people thought at all. And it was part and parcel of the same, who's going to replace Kamala Harris? Who's going to be VP in the first place? It's got to be a black woman. Black Lives Matter is happening. We don't want to actually give them anything in terms of the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act or any other intervention to keep black people or everybody from being killed by the police. So we'll give them Kamala Harris, a prosecutor who spent her entire life throwing black people in jail, as a sop to the idea that this is what black people want. So I don't know why they're saying this. I don't want it.
So what I'm hearing from you is not only do you hate women, you specifically hate black women.
That's why they call me the Candace Owens of the left, I guess.
That was just me in those comments. I was joking.
Oh, it was you?
Yeah, it's a kind of thing that an MSNBC host calls for and the people are not demanding. Obviously, there are probably plenty of people you could pick who fit those descriptions, so you could just pick one without saying it, without making it a race and a gender issue.
If you want it to be Barbara Lee, just let it be Barbara Lee. Barbara Lee is great. She has been a champion of an anti-war voice. There's a lot of reasons to like her, but diminishing it by acting like you have a cookie cutter slot and you're going to look for anybody who fits in that that vacancy, in that hole, it does no service to anybody.
And it reflects a subtle difference between how Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden, how they both kind of messaged on how they were going to pick a woman VP, but Biden just said, yes, I'm going to pick a woman, was pressed for it by the moderator at the debate. And Bernie said something slightly different, which was that there's so many extraordinarily qualified women, I expect to be able to pick one of them.
Yes, and
it was a little
ideology
different.
Mattered.
Yes, that is slightly different and better from a, not just diversity at all costs kind of perspective. Yeah. More Rising right after this.